She was a small girl, no older than 10, standing barefoot on the gravel path that led to my front gate. Her hair was unruly, curly, and tied haphazardly with a red ribbon that seemed too large for her. She wore a faded yellow dress, the hem frayed and barely reaching her knees. She stood there, clutching a small bundle in her hands, looking at me with an expression that was both serious and determined. Her words were simple, but they struck me in a way I couldn't explain. "Sir," she said, "can I have your leftovers if I give you a miracle?" I looked at her, confused. Was this a joke? A child trying to pull a prank? My laugh came out loud, a burst of humor that I hadn't felt in months. A miracle? From a girl who looked like she had nothing? I almost felt sorry for her, standing there in that worn-out dress with no shoes. "Your leftovers?" I asked, still chuckling. "What kind of miracle could you possibly give me?" She didn't flinch. In fact, her face remained calm, almost wise beyond her years. She didn't even smile, just stared at me with her big, brown eyes. It wasn't a beggar's look. It wasn't desperation. It was pure faith. And something about her stillness made me pause, made me wonder. The sun shone behind her, casting her figure in golden light. I looked down at the food that had been set aside for me, too much for one person, as always. Without fully understanding why, I found myself handing her the leftovers. She took them gratefully, then gave me a soft, knowing nod, as if she had already won. She walked away without another word, leaving me with a strange feeling that lingered long after she had disappeared. The days that followed were a blur of strange new routines. At first, I couldn't quite understand what the girl, whose name I learned was Lila, was trying to do. She seemed to think I could still do things that, logically, my body no longer allowed. I was used to people pitying me or treating me with caution, but Lila didn't see my wheelchair as a barrier. Instead, she looked at it as a challenge. One morning, as the sun poured golden light through the window, she stood before me with a bright smile and said, "Today's lesson is to stand." I blinked at her, incredulous. Stand? My legs hadn't moved in over 6 months. But she wasn't asking for my opinion. She handed me a sturdy walking cane. "Trust me," she said, her voice firm, though her eyes were full of gentle hope. "You can do this." I laughed nervously. The very idea of standing made me feel ridiculous. But she didn't let up. Slowly, she helped me shift my weight forward, encouraging me to put one hand on the armrest of my chair. My heart raced with the impossible task, and for a moment, I felt like I might fall flat on my face. But Lila's grip was firm, her small hand on mine stronger than I expected. I hesitated, but with her guiding me, I slowly lifted my body halfway out of the chair. The feeling of my legs touching the ground again, though shaky and unsteady, was like a flicker of a forgotten dream. I was only halfway standing, but it felt like a victory. The sun shone brightly, and for the first time in months, I felt a spark of something. Hope. It wasn't about the standing. It was about believing in something again. As the days passed, something remarkable began to happen. It wasn't the result of any grand gesture or miraculous cure. It was something quieter, something more profound. With every visit from Lila, I found myself changing in ways I hadn't even realized I needed. She didn't just come to help me with standing or walking. She came with small lessons, gentle encouragements, and a steady presence. Each day, we'd work on something new. One day, she had me close my eyes and imagine walking. "Feel your feet on the ground," she said. "Feel your body moving." I didn't think it would work, but I tried, and suddenly, I could almost feel it again, the sensation of walking, of moving freely. It wasn't real, but it felt close enough to stir something in my chest. On another day, she brought me a paintbrush. "Let's create," she said, as if that simple act could unlock something I had long forgotten. And so I did. I painted, not like I used to, but with a sense of freedom that I hadn't felt in years. As I dipped the brush into the paint, I realized I was alive, not just surviving, but living again. Lila, with her wisdom beyond her years, didn't just teach me how to stand or walk. She taught me how to believe again, how to hope when hope seemed like a distant memory. One afternoon, as we sat together on the porch, the sunlight spilling over us, I looked at her. She was smiling, a bright, innocent smile that made my heart feel lighter. "Thank you," I whispered, though the words seemed too small for what she had given me. She didn't say anything, just nodded, and I knew that her silent answer was enough. She had already worked her magic. It was a typical afternoon, filled with the usual warmth of the sun and the fragrance of flowers in the air. I was sitting on the porch, looking out at the garden when I saw her, Lila, or as she now called herself, Hope, walking toward me. But today, she wasn't alone. A woman, dressed in an elegant suit, stood beside her. The woman's face looked familiar, though I couldn't quite place her. As Hope approached, I noticed the way the woman looked at me, her eyes wide with recognition. There was something urgent in her expression, something that made me uneasy. When she reached me, she spoke softly, almost in a whisper. "She's my daughter," the woman said, her voice full of emotion. "Her name is not Lila. It's Hope. I've been looking for her. She ran away after our divorce." My heart dropped. This little girl, who had become my anchor, my hope, her real mother was here. The truth was something I hadn't expected, but it felt like a rush of emotions flooded my chest. Hope, Lila, had been living on her own, learning to survive, to dream, and to heal. Hope ran to her mother and hugged her tightly. There was something bittersweet in the moment. I had helped her discover her strength, and now, it seemed, it was time for her to return home. The woman turned to me, her voice softer now. She says you still need her. And honestly, I think you do. I nodded, not knowing what to say. As they walked away, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, but also an odd emptiness. Hope's presence had changed me forever, and though she was leaving, I knew I would never be the same.